Hey everyone, it's Scott here with a video about the top 5 decks in the Dragon Ball Super card game that should get more support. First off, as a word of warning, this is going to be 100% my own opinion, and it's going to be 100% biased towards the decks that I like, the decks I play, and the decks that I think should get more support. If you disagree, feel free to let me know down in the comments below, and let's just jump straight into it. So first up at number 5, we have Kefla, specifically Surge Kefla, that was distributed in the expansion set tournament packs that were given out at the Surge expansion events that were being held at the beginning of last year in January. I actually attended one of these events and I pulled a Surge Kefla from one of these packs. But despite that, I've never actually played the deck. The reason I've chose Kefla for number 5 is that with the Unison Warrior series, Bandai seem to have moved away from multicolour cards into more monocolour cards and decks. And as a result, the Surge leaders haven't got a lot of love. Specifically Kefla, I mean, since this expansion set tournament pack, we had some blue and yellow Universe 6 cards in Draft Box 2, but then, since then, there's only been one blue-yellow Universe 6 card released. It was this one during set 10, and I think we're well overdue for more cards to kind of beef up the blue-yellow Universe 6 archetype, and the Kefla Surge deck in particular. You can see for yourself, it's been well over 6 months since we last got a blue-yellow Universe 6 card. Let's start talking about what I think the deck needs. First of all, I think the leader needs a reprint. She was only distributed once in these expansion set tournament packs. I know not everyone was able to attend the Surge expansion events, and so there were a lot of people who were not able to get their hands on this leader. And while the Surge Broly from the same pack is being reprinted in the collector's set that is going to be released soon, Surge Kefla has not been reprinted, and I think if they're going to beef up the blue-yellow Universe 6 deck, specifically Kefla, the leader does need to be reprinted so more people can get their hands on a copy of her. Next, I think the deck just needs more cards, needs more battle cards. The ones it's got right now are pretty good, but there's always more room to expand the archetype out with maybe a new bomb type card, a boss monster, some people might say. Right now the deck is pretty reliant on having the Champa and Vados out and using the Caulifla and Kale that essentially evolve on top of a Caulifla or Kale you already have in play after they're comboed with. I think the deck could also benefit from a Universe 6 specific Unison. Obviously there's already a lot of good blue and yellow Unisons, but I think there's always room for something that's maybe a bit more specific to the archetype that could really help power up the deck, so to speak. Also, there's currently only one yellow Universe 6 specific super combo, and it's pretty standard with its effect. It's basically just a draw 1. The only benefit it has is it's at 5 life rather than 4. I think the deck could really benefit from having a better super combo, perhaps one more in line with the amazing super combos we got in set 11, where you put one card on the bottom of your deck and then draw 2. I always thought for the Surge leaders, a good type of super combo we could maybe have would be, instead of putting a card on the bottom of your deck drawing 2, perhaps put one card under your leader and then draw 2. Getting an extra activation of your leader's skill every time that you super combo would be amazing and would be a absolutely huge benefit for these Surge leaders. So next up here we have some characters that have yet to appear in the card game that could theoretically be part of the Universe 6 archetype in the future. First up we have the assistant to Universe 6's Supreme Kai. He doesn't actually have a name as far as I could find. He's just referred to as Fuwa's assistant. So I guess he's kind of the Universe 6 equivalent of Kibito. And then here we have Kamin and Oren, I believe that is how they're pronounced, from Dragon Ball Heroes. And down here we have Vegeta, possessed by Oren there. As you can see, looks very similar to Super Baby Vegeta, with these two being Tuffles. I guess that makes sense. And this is the fusion of these two characters. I believe it's referred to as Kami Oren. And down here is like a bigger kind of evolved form of Kami Oren. So yeah, that's my thoughts about the Kefla deck. And let's move on to the next deck I want to talk about. So here at number 4 we have Boujack, or the Space Pirates in general. This is another deck that I never actually played. I mean, I have all the pieces for it. There's just always been other decks I'd rather be playing. And as you can see here, it was introduced all the way back in set 6, Destroyer Kings, almost 2 years ago now, in April 2019. And these here are the most recent cards we got. We got 3 cards as part of the Anniversary Box 2020, so coming up 6 months ago again since we last had cards for this archetype. So I think it's well overdue for some more support. As for what the deck needs, I think a new leader would be in order. I mean, with this card we got here as in the Anniversary Box, it kind of fixed the issue with the current leader of not really having an awakened skill. But I don't think a new leader would be amiss, whether it's a new Boujack or one of the other Space Pirates. I think this is also one of the pre-Unison decks that could really benefit from having a Unison specific to the archetype, as opposed to the more generic yellow Unisons we have at the moment. I think a secret rare as well would be great, not only for the deck itself, but also for the people that really like Boujack as a character. And then we have also a field card. Really, I only included that because I think this Intergalactic World Tournament arena from the Boujack Unbound movie could very easily be the basis for a field card. And as for characters that have yet to appear that could be part of the Boujack deck going forward, we have this powered up version of Boujack from the Dragon Ball Heroes anime, I believe. I believe he's powered up by Fu. And this, I think, would be a good candidate for the secret rare, seeing as how most of the most recent secret rares have been from Dragon Ball Heroes. I think this guy would fit in pretty easily with the current crop of secret rares we have. And here, also in Dragon Ball Heroes, I guess the other members of the Boujack Brigade are made into Agents of Destruction, so that's Gokua, Bujin, Bido, apparently Zangya as well, although I couldn't find one of these images for her. Yeah, so these all could appear in a future set for the Boujack deck. Before we move on, one quick note, this image has been floating around as supposedly the next set in the Unison Warrior series, and as you can see right down there, there is Boujack, so this could be one of the archetypes that we are seeing get more support in the very next set. And next up at number 3, we come to the first deck that I have actually played, which is Jackie Chun. And as you can see down here, this deck has received no new cards whatsoever since it was first released in World Martial Arts Tournament in November of 2018. So it's well overdue for some more support. The reason I've included this Announcer Reboot leader here is because I think you could very easily at this point make the argument that if you're going to run a Yellow World Tournament deck, you'd be better off using this announcer as opposed to this Jackie Chun leader here. However, I think there is still some benefits to running this Jackie Chun. Not only do you get access to yellow leader specific cards, and you're not limited by the announcer's permanent of only being able to run World Tournament battle cards, but also I really like Jackie Chun's permanent here of when it attacks a battle card, your opponent can't combo. So top of the list as to what this deck needs is a reboot leader. I think they need to remake this Jackie Chun. It doesn't have to be a massively drastic reboot, but I think they really just need to emphasize this permanent skill here. Perhaps they could give him an auto that in some way benefits him when he KOs an opponent's battle card through battle. Perhaps maybe switching him back to active mode. I think that would be a pretty big improvement over what the card currently has. And yet again, this is another of the pre-unison decks that needs a unison specific to the archetype. As for an effect, maybe something that would allow you to KO your own Great Ape Goku rather than having to rely on Moon Destroying Kamehameha. I think the deck would also benefit from another counterplay. Obviously there is Mutaito as part of the Yellow World Tournament card set. And as for the counterattack, with Mutaito being part of the Yellow World Tournament archetype and him being the creator of the Mafuba, it does seem crazy to me that yellow is the only of the 4 original colours in the game to not have its own Mafuba, so I think they could remedy that pretty quickly. As for the characters yet to appear, I was really scraping the bottom of the barrel to come up with some characters from the World Tournament that haven't already got a card. I mean, Launch technically appeared as part of the World Tournament arc, and there's no Launch with the World Tournament special trait, but obviously there are Launch cards at this point. And then here we have the Orin Temple Bullies from the temple that Krillin was at before he went to train with Master Roshi. Again, that's a bit of a stretch. There's this Bruce Lee impersonator kind of guy from the first World Tournament. Then there's this guy, Anthony the Great, I believe it's pronounced, as well as you have here Max Yajirobe from one of the later World Tournament arcs. Jackie Chun is another one of the decks I would love to see some more support for. And moving on, at number 2 we have Mass Saiyan / Bardock Zeno. He was introduced in May 2018 as part of Starter Deck 3 Dark Invasion, and this right here was the first Dragon Ball Super card game product I ever bought, and this obviously then was the first leader I ever used, so it definitely holds a special place in my heart. As for the most recent cards that support this deck, this kind of depends what you consider to be support. I mean, this is the first leader on the list to not have a specific special trait associated with it or the deck. So really, you can make the argument that anything that requires either a black leader or a black Saiyan leader specifically kind of is support for this deck in a way. Not that you necessarily are going to want to run all of those cards. I mean, you have more specific examples like Kraken Space Time and this Mass Saiyan here that actually feature the leader of the deck in their card's artwork. And then you have a card like this Gogeta here that technically only needs a black Saiyan only leader, which Mass Saiyan / Bardock is, but is this really support for this deck? Not really, this is more for the Goku and Vegeta Zeno deck that's just been released. And then there's a card like this Super Saiyan 4 Goku here. I mean, it needs a black leader, it's overwhelmed, this leader is good for filling up the drop. Is this support for the deck? I mean, it depends how fast and loose you are with the term support, I suppose. And finally, you have a card like this Vegeta from the Vegex starter deck, and that brings up the point of if you want a black Saiyan only leader that fills up the drop area, would you not rather be playing Vegex than this Bardock? And one thing that may surprise some people is the top of the list of what I think this leader needs is a good field card. They released this here, Toki City in set 7. I was really excited when they first announced it to run this in Mass Saiyan, but it's just not good enough to make the cut. I mean, I really like this idea here of battle cards you play with overrun not going to the warp at the end of the turn, but only being able to do it when there are 3 cards under it and you can only really put 1 card under it each turn. It's just not good enough. And really, I would love to see them kind of reboot Toki City, kind of in the way they have rebooted these two field cards recently. I don't think it would take a lot to make this card playable. I mean, one idea of what they could do is they could give this card Wormhole. That way you're able to overrun twice in a turn. You're putting 2 cards under it at that point. Maybe in addition to that, they could give this Auto Burst 3. That way you overrun the first time in a turn, you put a card under this, you burst 3, and then you got 3 in the drop for your second overrun of the turn. Or another idea, and maybe this is a step too far, but if they gave it the permanent that said if your leader is a black Bardock Xeno, so it would only work when your leader's on its backside, because on the front it's not Bardock Xeno, it's Mass Saiyan. But if it said permanent, if your leader is a black Bardock Xeno, battle cards you play using overarm aren't sent to the warps at the end of the turn. I think that would be an incredible boost, not only for this card, but for this deck in general. And then I think all we would need is something like that and a reboot for the leader, and suddenly I think this deck could be viable again. As the characters yet to appear, I mean, everything from Xenoverse is pretty much in the game at this point. I mean, you got Toa, Mira, Demigra, they're all in the game. There was no character I could really find. I mean, maybe they could somehow find a way to make the player character from Xenoverse into a card. So now let's move on to the final deck that I think needs support, and that is number 1, Agents of Destruction. I mean, this might not be too surprising considering my first video was a 2-hour deep dive into the Agents archetype. And it's not necessarily that this deck needs more support, that like it's not good enough. Really, this is more me saying that I hope Bandai continues to support this deck on a regular basis. I hope it's not another year and a half before we're getting more Agents of Destruction cards. So the archetype was first introduced in set 6, Destroyer Kings. There was no leader at that point. The leader was introduced with this most recent set of cards in the 2nd anniversary box, released back in August of 2020. So top of the list as to what it should get is a non-black leader. As I mentioned in my first video, with the leader being black, there are just some cards that black do not get. For example, the 3 negates if you have a unison out, so that's Dormant Potential Unleash, Wolf Fang Fist, Release from Evil, and Final Hope Slash. There's just not a black equivalent of those cards. So if we had a Agents of Destruction leader that was in any of the other colours, any one of the other colours, it would have access to any of those negates and the deck would just be so much stronger. I mean, that's just one example of the kind of cards that black just does not get. Also, the deck could use a better super combo. I know in that first video I kind of extolled the virtues of using the Lord Slug super combo, but that's not to say you couldn't improve on the quality of super combo in that deck. As long as it had Agent of Destruction in its name, it would still have all the same benefits as the existing Lord Slug Agent of Destruction super combo. As for the characters yet to appear, there are actually still quite a few options to choose from. Obviously you have to excuse the quality of these images here. These really are the only ones I could find, but in the Dragon Ball Heroes arcade game in Japan, not only do characters like Boujack, Garlic Jr., Lord Slug get the margin symbol and become the Agents of Destruction, as they're called in this game, but so do some of the other characters associated with them. So for example, you have Dr. Lychee here, you can just about make out has the M on his forehead. Also the other space pirates, so there's the Zangya I couldn't find a good image of earlier. And then you have kind of Lord Slug's henchmen, so Wings, Anguilla, Medimacha and Zewin. As well as Garlic Jr.'s movie henchmen, who I don't think actually have any cards in the game at the moment. I think they used the anime henchmen when they introduced Garlic Jr. to the game. So yeah, like I say, I hope we'll be seeing some of these characters showing up soon, and I hope it's not too long before we get more Agents of Destruction cards. So what do you think? Do you agree? Do you disagree? Let me know in those comments down below, and thanks for watching.